Tomuto som porozumel, toto znamenie znamenalo, že naozaj začíname. Tak ešte raz, pekný, príjemný podvečer. Moje meno je Tomáš Hučko. Som šéf-redaktor mesačníka Kapitál. Stojím tu preto, že tento rok je mesačný Kapitál partnerom festivalu BRaK. A nielen nové číslo Kapitálu, ale aj súčasne aj BRaKu je tematicky zamerané na sociálnu reportáž a vôbec reportáž ako takú. Preto máme veľkú radosť, že naše pozvanie do Bratislavy prijala renomovaná svetová japonská reportérka Shiori Ito, ktorá napísala veľmi vážnu, náročnú knihu o znásilnení v japonskej spoločnosti, volá sa Black Box. Vydali sme ju pred niekoľkými dňami vo vydavateľstve Kapitál. Ak máte o knižku záujem, dá sa ešte dnes kúpiť, prípadne zajtra celý deň. Takže knižku tu nechám, možno ešte sa ňu môžete pozrieť. Ako vravím, je to pre nás veľká radosť, že Shiori priletela z Tokia, strávila s nami pár veľmi príjemných dní a možno až teraz prichádza tá ťažšia časť, keď budem musieť hovoriť o tých náročných veciach, o ktorých vo svojej tvorbe píše. Ale celý tento rozhovor už prenechávam spoluzakladateľke feministického newsletteru Kurník Michaele Kučovej. Tak Michaela, máš slovo a prajem vám, neviem, či sa dá povedať príjemný zážitok, ale snáď silný zážitok, ktorý pre vás bude niečo znamenať. Ďakujem.
Ďakujeme veľmi pekne. This discussion will be held in English, so thank you very much. Tomáš was talking that he's not sure if this will be a pleasant experience. I hope it will, because this is, of course, a difficult topic, but I think we can discuss it in a way that is constructive and maybe enriching, and hopefully with some positive notes as well. Shiori, welcome. We are very happy to have you and to have this opportunity to talk about your book and about your story. So welcome to BRaK and Bratislava once again.
Thank you. Japanská reporter Shiori Ito was the only words that I got from you. And I think it's such a beautiful language, Slovakian, and I couldn't believe that my book is now translated in here and it just released. And there are so many discovery that I had today even, that we do share so many things here. So I think we have so many things to share. But again, there's so many trigger warning. It's not going to be maybe present topic for many of us, but I think that's why we are all here and we gotta share it. And I never seen such a diverse event. I never seen 3 dogs in the place ever, this many men ever before. So I'm very optimistic already. So thank you so much having here.
Yeah, I think we won't be discussing like any graphic details, but of course, if you feel like it, please feel free to leave at any moment. Do whatever you need to do to be comfortable.
Take a breeze and have some wine, beer. I'm sorry that we had to do it inside, and hopefully we'll have happier time after this.
Yeah, and we also want to engage with you as well. So if you have any questions or comments, please feel free. We will try to include you as much as you want to be included. And I think we were talking with Shiori that it's really important for us to exchange experiences.
Hey, there's another dog coming. I'm happy.
This event keeps getting better and better.
Yeah.
So 4 dogs now. I think we can start properly discussing things. Yeah, let's get more serious, because this is a really a recent book, recent translation. I don't know how many of you had the chance to already read it or learn about what it's actually about. So maybe if you could shortly introduce what is the story about and why was it important for you to create a book about what you experienced?
Yeah, thank you. So I wrote this book in 2017 and I published it October. I don't know if you do remember what happened around that time in the world, but that was the time when Metoo movement sparked in the world. And I experienced rape in 2015, and I went whole police prosecution procedure, and I'm a journalist, and as a journalist, I just start finding whole many shit happening behind this system in Japan, and I realized how naive I was to believe whole system. So I started to do, well, I was in a way forced to do my own investigation, and I was wishing to do, other co-worker to cover not only my story, but what is happening with our system in Japan. But it turned out rape was quite a taboo topic to talk about. So in the end of the day, after 2 years from my experience, I decided to speak about my own experience so we can all see where we need to change, where we need to update, where we need to do some highlighting so we know what's wrong. And yeah, that was 2017. And right after I wrote this, I got a lot of backlash and, slut shame. And that was, within my expectation. But that time, Me Too happened in the world, and that really pushed me and helped me. And I'm so happy all of you, except one person who translated my book, doesn't speak in Japanese. Because if you Google me in Japanese, I don't think you want to come here. Because it's really horrible. So I still have some difficult time to talk about it. But that means there is something behind why we don't want to talk about it, why it is hard to talk about it. And I think I first thought this is so Japanese, what we have in behind this book. But then I start realizing we can find it everywhere in the world. It's all connected. Some part of the word is maybe better, but I just learned you don't have also consent in your law. It's 2022, and that was shocking. And I thought, I could talk about whole shocking part in Japan, but I think there are so many parts and points that we need to point out to really discuss why are we still talking about Me Too? Why are we still talking about this? Because it hasn't been enough, I think.
Yeah, I would like to come back maybe what you were saying about the reactions, because I think part of it is not only your book and your story broke this silence, brought something that we don't want to usually talk about publicly, but your story also involves a very powerful man, a well-known, well-connected journalist. So do you think this also played a role in how your action was received?
Yeah, so I prefer not talk about this person, but this person was biographer of ex-Prime Minister of Abe. So he was quite powerful, and one of the reasons why I decided to step out was to protect myself, because there was arrest warrant issued against him, but then one day it was gone, and I start finding out how the system could be also twisted under the power. I have no evidence, but no one knew what happened. And there is our job as a journalist to start questioning, but everyone had to keep silence, and I need to know why. And because I experienced it, I know it's not very journalistic way to cover your own story, but I knew my story very well, so I could start talking to police, prosecutor. I found the taxi driver who drove me that night. And there are so many things I wish I could say, but I can't because of I'm still in a low case. But yeah, that was the most difficult thing. And I believe all, sexual violence, sexual harassment is happening when we have unbalanced power dynamics. So we shouldn't forget that there's always something, and that's what I experienced, and that was the most hardest, I think.
I want to maybe ask you about what were like the main issues that you wanted to draw attention to through your book? Because yes, you are bringing your own personal experience, unfortunately, but what were the topics that you wanted to highlight? Abuse of power, or maybe also some legislation that needed to be changed? What were the priorities for you? What did you want to communicate with sharing what you went through?
There were so many points. It was great lesson learned in a bad way. You know, I realized our Japanese rape law was 110 years old, when women didn't even have a vote rights, and so that was something I didn't know. And other thing was, yeah, of course, education to come with. We didn't have education of consent, so how can we speak about consent? And in our culture, we often say, no means yes. So we can't, under that kind of culture, we can't really say no if it's taking us yes. And another part was, it was painful realization that I was living in a sexism environment, because I experienced sexual violence every day since I was little girl, especially when I was wearing uniform on the train, and we have to just bear with it. I don't know why, but that was the way, and we just talked about what happened that morning to our classmate, and we were told not to talk about it anymore. So I felt it was part of my fault that I didn't do anything, I felt. And this, a biggest violence hit me, and I realized slowly, because maybe of the language that I speak in Japanese or the society I was embedded with, I was shaped silence. I was shaped to feel the shame, and I couldn't move faster. I wish I could just do something, quick. It took me 5 days to go to police. It took me 2-3 days to talk to my best friend about what happened. So I don't know where to start, but I didn't want anyone else to experience this. So that's why I decided to talk with my own words.
Yeah, you mentioned that it's kind of crazy that we still have to actually remind people about thing called consent, and all of this Metoo debate. But can you see maybe some change from the time of your assault within Japan or even globally? Do you feel like there is some progress in the way that we approach these topics of consent and violence?
Well, so the thing is, because of this, I don't know what happened, but arrest warrant has been canceled and the criminal case was dropped for my case. But I kept fighting in a civil court case, and I won. And the judge said there was no consent. But still, in a criminal case, it wasn't criminal. So the guy is still keep saying, I didn't do anything illegal. So in Japan, it's still okay-ish, and it's no criminal act. So that means, yeah, we haven't changed that part, and which was surprising because we kind of share similar rape law here in Slovakia too, right? Wasn't there any conversation around the consent or?
Well, I think there quite recently was a campaign by NGO that wanted to bring consent actually into law, like this specific language, because our law currently is based only on proving that there was force, there was violence or threat of violence that led to sexual act, and you actually have to prove that you fought back sufficiently, even with the word sufficiently, which is totally absurd, since we know that many bodies' natural reaction is freezing, not fighting at all, and we don't really have to go into details of this, but it's really crazy how the laws are not reflecting the biological nature of such violent acts, and also lived experience of so many people. So yeah, unfortunately, it's in many ways a shocking book, but also not that many new things that a Slovak reader will learn, and you can see a lot of similarities. But actually, what I found really horrifyingly absurd was this term quasi-rape, which is, I hope, Japanese uniqueness. Can you maybe explain what it is, since it's related to your case specifically? So what is a quasi-rape in Japanese culture?
Yeah, I don't even know, but they have this weird separate law, rape and quasi-rape, secondary rape. When you are intoxicated under alcohol or drug or something, it's categorized as a quasi-rape. So I don't know why they have to separate it. It's a big question, and I also don't like the name. Why secondly, If you are intoxicated, it should be super rape, Like not secondly, because you can't react. So it's such, so because there is no idea of consent, it still exists that way. And it was a biggest, I think, part of me struggling, because I didn't have a memory of me getting there to hotel, and I woke up during the rape, and that I blamed myself. Why don't I remember what happened to me? I couldn't blame somehow him, because I didn't know what happened, and it took me some time to figure out. And I still believe I was drugged, but at that time, Japanese police didn't have any system to test it, so I still, till today, I don't know. And as I said, I won my case, and it was ruled as unconsented, unwanted sex. But I also lost, because I talked about quasi-rape, because I talked about maybe I was drugged. So I still have to pay for the compensation money towards to him. And the scariest thing was, when you speak up about your own case, I have to be also investigated, not only for my case that was filed, but I was also investigated as a false accusation and defamation by police, because the guy filed a case. So for me, that was shocking to know. While it's okay to speak, it's okay. I want you to all to speak, to contribute. But when you want to speak up, and when you might be targeted to be sued or investigated, it's impossible. And that's why we kept this culture of silence so long. And I don't like to be called victim, because I'm not just a victim, I'm a journalist. But I think that I received many labels, liar, slut. But the best label I received so far was silence breaker. And it's not easy thing to do, but once I did, look where I end up. I didn't really imagine that I could share this hard topic with you in front of you today. I mean, I haven't seen people's face for past 2 years. In Japan, we still wear masks, so I'm so happy I can see your reaction face. And I know it's hard topic, so you're not making many reaction, but I want you to react. I want you to share your emotion, because I know some part you feel it, and I believe that's why you're here. And of course, we all know, I guess, what kind of violence this is. But how I felt it was, I think we all have different sex, and sex, if as human, if we were like house, it's like a base of the house, and when that part is violated, the people you're with, the family, the community are also affected. I couldn't figure out how so many years why this one night incident is still haunting me, still shaking me till today. I couldn't understand. I went to Colombia to film cocaine story, and Peru to so guerrilla story. I felt threatened for my life being as a journalist, but what happened to me in Japan, it still makes me not be able to sleep at night. Why? And I do believe this violation of base of your house, it takes time, and I think we all have to remember that is why rape often is used as a weapon for war. And the person who's been working in Congo, Dr. Mukwege, who's been helping these women who was sexually violated under the conflict, he said that rape is one of the cheapest weapons. And I do believe that because it can destroy many things, not just the person, but the family and the community. And it's beyond the word that I can explain. But I think for who those experienced it, I think they know.
Yeah, I think like one of the most common misconceptions about sexual violence is that it's about sex and it's about like uncontrollable lust. But that's not true at all, because all of these acts are actually about power and violence and dominating over someone else. And I think if we understand that, then we can better understand the whole issue and what is actually going on. And even have like a proper conversation about consent, because this is not about some sort of undeniable urge in anyone, man or woman. But as you were saying, like how horrific this experience can be and how it is targeted and used in different contexts for distraction. I'm wondering what are maybe the things that actually helped you maybe to rebuild, but also even from the beginning, like what helped you to break the silence? Because you were saying that there's definitely a culture of silence within Japan, but also like connected in this topic in general, I think globally. There's a lot of stigma and shame attached to it anywhere. And what were the things that helped you really break this?
I think the fact of my career as a journalist helped me, because I don't think I could see and face my case as myself. It was too much. So I kind of acted as I'm reporting this case for a girl. I have to separate myself in that way so I can face it. But a few years later, I realized I need to reconnect with myself, because I felt like I've been acting. So I wrote this big book 4 years ago, right after I went public. And this time, I think I was still my journalistic part. I couldn't talk about my feelings, so I just wrote what I felt, but more in my memory part and what I investigated. So it was more of journalistic work. But that also helped me, because I could, organize in my head what was my memory and what was in documentation, so I could be confident to talk about it. But it was also hard work, but for me, I guess talking the truth was for me to survive. And I believe there are so many ways to survive. One, maybe choose not to talk about it, and that's fine. Because the most important thing you have to do is protect yourself to survive, to make a next step. But for my case, it was about finding the truth, because I really didn't know what happened to my body, me, how did I get there? So I wanted to find out, and that way I could keep myself going. But if I wasn't a journalist, I don't think I could have done this. Yeah.
As a journalist, you usually tell stories of other people, or you give them platform to tell their own stories. So how was the process to actually talk about your own experience? You said that you try to stick to the facts, but what was the writing process for you like?
You know, I remember I wrote it in 3 months, but 2 months I couldn't write anything. And that was just like that. I couldn't face it. But I was having a little small IC recorder in my bra everywhere I went, talking to police, prosecutor, because I knew there was something fishy going on. So I actually had hundreds of hours of recordings, and my friends helped me to transcribe it, everything, to report the case. And so I feel like without that transcribe papers, I couldn't write this, because I didn't remember so many things to, I guess, protect myself. So the technology helped me. And if I didn't have a CCTV that later I found from the hotel, I couldn't prove that I was intoxicated. So I don't think I could have done the same thing, let's say 10 years ago, if I didn't have that technology.
Great. So technology also brings something good, even for like discussion about sexual violence, even though there are also those comments that are really terrible to read about these cases. What I really appreciated about your book was actually this really thorough investigative part of it, that you really take us through all of the steps that you've taken, but it's also in moments quite disheartening read that you see a lot of frustrating moments which are really hard to understand the injustice in that or the confusion of that. In moments like those, what helped you keep going?
Cat and wine, I think.
So no dogs?
And dog and friends. My family, they were so against for me to talk. My father is like, I want my daughter to be happy, have a kids and married. And I was like, that's not my happiness, Dad. I have to, find my own truth, and that's my happiness. But I had a close friends who believed in me, and that was enough to go on. And I guess also being able to speak English helped me, because knowing if I won't be able to live in Japan, I can maybe do something else outside. So that helped, that kind of idea that if I can't live in the community, I could maybe go outside. Because if you have to survive within your own community and do such a thing that people think it's, not okay, it's hard. So I hope when you do something like that, you will find your second home that you feel like you can, rely on, live on, because otherwise it's gonna be so tough. And I don't know how many people who can speak Japanese. So that's Dennis, amazing translator, and it was his first translation, and I don't really know why he chose this, because it's such a hard topic to, translate, and I really appreciate that, really. And I think he knows what Japanese is, but for instance, when we don't have the way to say fuck you, the way I can say is like a little stupid thing, something like that. So baka, that's the worst I can maybe think about. So when I try to defend myself towards this man, I was saying it, but then I didn't sound like I was mad. And I realized I can't do this in Japanese, so I instantly have to switch my mind in English and told him fuck off, because I didn't have that language. And that made me realize that I was somehow limited within my own language and culture. And I was wondering if you have that kind of feeling when it comes to language. Do you have that in Slovak?
Well, I think, I think we have like alternative for most of the ways. We definitely have bad words that can be used efficiently.
You guys have to teach me so I can use it in
I'm
Japan.
surprised that, It didn't happen already. It's weird. You've been here from Wednesday, right? So
I've heard all the drunken words, but I don't know if it's a bad word.
You're starting. That's good. Yeah, I think Slovak debate definitely lacks a lot of translation because when we use English terms, for example, like rape culture, it stays closed within a certain community, and this type of discourse then it's not available for wider groups, which I think it's necessary to talk about. But I think what I found most interesting is that actually, and you touched on it as well, that we talk about people who experienced sexual abuse as victims. And there is also this alternative of survivors, but in Slovak language it's more connected with like survivors of Holocaust and things like that. So it's not really appropriate. It has weird vibes, I think, for using in this context. And I think it tells also a lot about how we are willing to discuss these themes, that there is only this victim, and I think it's very limiting for how we talk about things that are in our lives.
So how do you say fuck off? I need to learn it.
There's a camera, so I'm trying
Is that
to...
that bad to say? I mean, as a woman, do you have limitation of language? Like,
I don't feel so, no.
Okay, that's
no.
great. That's great.
I mean, like, I would say that the culture of silence in Slovakia, it's not, it's more connected with like the taboo of the topic itself and with exactly not really exploring what is consent, even like within maybe partnership where rape also can happen. So, but I don't think it's in this way similar to maybe Japanese culture and Japanese language. But that's something that's very interesting for me because your story is very precisely set in a Japanese context. It's a Japanese story, but I think it has many similarities to how things in this area are in Slovakia. So I'm interested in what do you think, like, what this Japanese story can maybe tell the rest of the world and other countries? What does it bring to the conversation in countries like right now here in Slovakia, for example?
We are having this conversation, so I'm very happy. I think the lesson we learned is once you raise your voice, it's gonna reach somewhere. It might gonna take some time, but it's gonna reach somewhere. And I think when Me Too happened, you know, it was, of course, we all knew how toxic culture Hollywood had, but no one really talked about it. And it was the first time by reporter who really did deep investigation and put the lights on it. So it was a work of journalism, and that means that if we don't know what's happening, we can't talk about it. We can't change, you know, this culture, toxic culture. So I think the first important thing is really start talking about it, really putting some lights on it. And, you know, as a victim, it's a lot to do. And so it doesn't have to be someone who experienced it, you know. People around it can also talk about it. And I think the most important thing that I felt being in Japan was especially chikan culture, that, you know, this sexual abuse that you receive in public area, was there were so many bystanders, that the observers, they were there, but they didn't do anything. They were not victim, they were not perpetrator, but they didn't do anything. That was the worst for me. So if we don't have these people, if they decided to take action to raise a voice or talk about it, we didn't have to say me too, you know, because it's a lot energy to use. We don't really want to talk about it. It's okay if you want to talk about it, but we shouldn't force it. But, you know, people around us could also talk about it. So I think, yeah, most important thing is start talking about it.
Yeah, I think what we said earlier, that you described, like you had different options, like you knew that if things would go really bad, you had some possibilities how to function and get another work and things like that, and not everyone has that right, and I think it's really important to, if we feel like we can do it and we have these opportunities, we take it for people who don't have this type of privilege and opportunities. But also, I think maybe it's important to state that it doesn't really have to manifest in a book. It can be just talking really with your closest friends and with your family. And I think a lot of things can change even from sharing within your closest circle. So your experience in this way, it's kind of extreme in a way to really share this widely and have like 11 translations of your story and sharing with the whole world what you went through and what are the implications of such an experience. But maybe even for people who are contemplating discussing this with their friends, do you maybe have some advice for people who are maybe afraid of the reaction? You also mentioned that this topic created some tension within your family. So what did you find helpful in starting these conversations with people?
I think so, and I mean, the best thing I can say is that believe in your own truth. You know how it hurts. People around you didn't experience it, and maybe they tell you what to do, but they don't know your pain. You know the best, so you have to be very honest with yourself, and that's the start. But maybe the society wouldn't let you the way I experienced. But I had a little bit interesting experience. So my book is most sold in China and mainland China, and when I went to book tour, I had 4 different cities to go around. And first meeting with publishers, they told me, Shiori, in this country, we can't say Me Too. It's censored, so don't talk about Me Too. And they also say, don't talk about feminism. And I'm like, this book is all about that. What do you mean? How did you get printed out,
It's just a story, no context.
And then I realized that they put the subtitle Black Box, Japan's Shame. I didn't know.
Instant bestseller, right?
And I start realizing, we were limited. Like we were told we can't have event more than 300 people. Police were kept calling my publisher, but then I realized it didn't matter what's the label of Japan's Shame or whatever. People gathered, and we just needed to find a channel to talk about it. So I couldn't say Me Too, but Metoo in China sounded like rabbit and rice. So I just kept saying rabbit and rice, and I did my whole tour with rabbit and rice, and it didn't work. So even that there are censorship, we will find a way to talk about it. And I feel like if this was, I knew other Chinese survivor who talked about her own story, and it was completely censored. And because it was Japan's shame, they could talk about same topic. And I found that was fascinating, because it happens everywhere. That's why I'm here. It happens here too. And if you haven't been talking about Me Too, I don't know, maybe there is another way to say it, You can steal from China and start saying rice and rabbit if you don't want to say Me Too. But so if I know topic is hard to talk about, and it might be hard to talk in your society, but people needs to talk about it because it's daily thing that they, I think, experience. I realized how many people are experiencing it around me, around the world, and that was surprising.
Yes, that's the thing that I think we also share, like between Japan and Slovakia, that people don't really want to talk about it and don't trust the institutions to seek help. often, unfortunately, very rightly, because the statistics say that around 10% of Slovak women over 15 years have some experience with sexual violence, but I think the number is probably much higher, since we don't really want to talk about it and we don't want to admit it. And even like very similar numbers in Japan, that around 10% of these people actually report it to the police. And it's quite staggering how such different cultures have such sad similarities, actually.
Yeah, I mean, if 10% of these people who experience it report it, meaning 90% are silenced, or, you know, seeing as it didn't never happen, and that's scary. You know, rape is a serious crime, but still, and I really, whole these few years, I kept wondering, how would it be easier to report? How would it be easier to talk about it? And for me, I just needed to realize what happened to me was rape. For me, it took me some time to realize it. Funny, huh? Now I'm talking about it, but it really did. And so I think if people around you are talking about it, the culture, and about the consent, about our own body, I could have, we can realize it earlier. And I wished that was the kind of society I was living in before. So,
yeah, I think it really starts, and you can definitely feel it in Slovakia, that there's a lack of education about reproduction, about sexual health, and rape is
I would
actually...
love to hear what was your experience of sex education from the floor. If anyone want to share?
Anyone wants to reminisce? What useful did you learn at your school?
There was none.
We learned how to put condoms on bananas.
Yay!
Oh, wow. So there's no idea of consent talked about. So the parents has to teach. Did
If they are willing.
who had a sex education from your parents? Great, great, great. Okay, a few. Yeah, wow.
Yeah, and I think it starts here, to actually know what sex is, how our body feels in different situations, and then we can understand what is and what isn't consent, and what is violence and what is sex. So yeah, I think it really has a lot of repercussions.
Exactly. Like what I was surprised about our education is that we don't learn about consent. It's not in our curriculum. They teach only after egg and sperm meets, happy ever after. That's all they teach after what happened. The most important thing is before, ne? But we don't learn about it. And our age of consent in Japan is 13 years old. Yeah, 13. Like, and then you were assumed that you know about consent and you can say yes to, to sex and be a mother, possibly. But yeah. But the age you can marry in Japan, now just updated, but is 18 years old. So you can get pregnant at 13, say yes to, sex. And so there is whole education is missing. If you want to plan your family, great, but then teach kids what is it about. And if we don't know about it, how do we say yes or no?
I think we often think that we are protecting people by silence, but by not talking about it. But it doesn't go away if we don't talk about it. Actually, if you talk about sex and consent with your children, then they are more likely to actually let you know if something weird is happening, if they are feeling uncomfortable with anyone. And as you were saying, there was time that you had to take to realize what actually happened to you. And I think it's really scary when an adult woman is not sure what's happening, and we don't really have the information available to understand what happened to us and what are the steps that need to be taken and how can we take care of ourselves, and that we shouldn't blame ourselves if we go through something like this.
Yeah, exactly. And sex education is part of human rights education. And I've been covering some stories in Sierra Leone in West Africa. And once I was interviewing minors who experienced sexual violence, and there was a 4-year-old girl with her mother at the rape crisis center, and I was talking to the mother, knowing how did she get to know about it was when the mother told a little girl, if someone touches your private part, please tell mommy, because that's really important part of your body and that's not okay. And she said, daddy does that. And that was the moment that the mother got to know about the violence. And so yeah, kids doesn't know how to say it, if it's wrong or not. And I have experienced similar thing when I was small too, and I didn't know at all how to say what to say. So education is really all about being able to speak up for yourself as well, and that's really important. It should start earliest 4 years old, 3 years old, I believe.
Were there some resources, either information or like more physical support, for example, that were useful to you? Because I think a lot of the times we don't really know, like we ignore the problem until it happens to us, and then we are left really shocked and traumatized in a situation which is really difficult to deal with. And then to start to look what we can actually do, how we can help ourselves, it's extremely difficult. So do you have maybe something that was useful for you to learn more about this?
Yeah, well, there is UNESCO is making global sexual education handbook, so it's globally distributed, and I think they say it should start later than 5 years old. It should start later than 5 years old is too late to start sex education. That's what they say, and they start. They teach you where you start, you know, by teaching the names and so on. So that. It's really basic, but that's if you don't know where to get resources, I think it's a good place to start with.
Yeah, I think in Slovakia there's a lot of great work that the NGOs do. So it's definitely a good source for information, either for you or for your workplace or schools. So that's something that I would recommend in Slovak context. I forgot to bring my watch here, so I don't know what the time is.
It's 8:22.
Okay, so maybe do you have some more questions or some comments that you would like to share?
I'm really happy seeing dogs. That makes me feel so relaxed. So thank you so much for these dog owners. Yes.
Really happy to see also there was some question, right? Yeah.
I don't know, do you hear me?
I can hear you. Do you guys hear her? Yeah. Okay. Cool.
Okay, I just, first of all, I want to thank you to writing this book, and first of all, like being here and talk about it. I can relate so much to what you are saying, and it's also so hard to hear that. But yeah, like thank you for writing this book. And I have like one comment and 2 questions maybe, even though I have like many questions. Like the first comment is that I'm from Czech Republic, and this Metoo hashtag was, you know, no one was taking it seriously. People were making laugh of it, and it was just horrible. Like people were scared to even use it because everyone was just making jokes about it. So now it's getting better. Also, because cases are coming up, as you are writing about politicians raping girls, young women. So
Do you want to answer for that first, Dennis? Come up. So this is Dennis. I didn't know, but he's been working on translation for 2 past years. And he was wishing to pay his, can I say, tuition fee out of it. But it took some time. So he already graduated. Congratulations. But he chose this book. And I think that's so amazing.
Yeah, thank you. So I think I just found it really striking that Shiori's case was covered more in like foreign Western media than in Japanese media. And so, I read about her case, in BBC, CNN, then it was also covered in our local Deník N newspaper. And I was thinking that I would translate some non-fiction book, from Japanese to Slovak. For some time, and this book just seemed to be, perfect match. And I also felt this topic of, sexual violence was somehow underappreciated and not discussed to sufficient extent. And so I thought there is a gap that could be filled, by this book. So that's basically a reason. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. I really appreciate it. Sorry, what was the other question again?
If it was healing in some way for you to write this story.
That's a tough question. I think it was in a way so that I could organize about what happened and, what's the information, where is it from so precisely. And that was amazing way to prepare for my court case. So I memorized so many things, but I think the most healing part was to be able to connect with people. This made way to do so for me. But my travel to China, I was afraid if I would be censored and taken away. But then meeting these amazing people who share their own stories, that was something it helped me to heal, because I think the scariest thing was I've been feeling isolated from the society. I have to move away for my security reason after I wrote it for a few years to London. And so it helped me to connect with people. And going back to the, hashtag #MeToo, it was like that in Japan as well. And because we didn't have any law to protect sexual violence or sexual harassment, it just put people who said so in a risk, and it was so hard. So we kind of started to say we too, because if you say me, you end up being target. So we want to say we, because it's all about it comes back to us and it's our problem. So that's how we dealt with it. But it shouldn't be that way. It should be the way that we listen to each one of them. But I feel you, and I've been there too. So thank you so much for sharing.
Are there any more questions? Even maybe in Slovak we can translate.
I have 2 questions. The first question is, maybe I'm a bit misinformed, but why black box? That's the thing that the whole thing.
You have to read the book.
Yes, so is it something that you can tell us now, or should we just read the book as an overview of this topic?
I will tell you. No, it's because I think it's Japanese maybe way of saying, but everywhere the police, prosecutor, I went, they said it's all happened in a black box. We don't know what happened, and they just throw it away. And what I wanted to do is that, of course, what happened to me was behind the closed door. So yes, they call it black box, but I realized that there are so many black boxes in many institution, organization, how they hide things. So my wish was writing my own black box so that it can lead to open other black boxes. Yeah. I was thinking to call this book as Honey Trap first, because that's how people called me. And I thought it's funny to just name it, but I'm very happy that I named it Black Box, because now people in Japan introduce me Black Box Miss Ito. No, Honey Trap Miss Ito. So I think I chose the title right.
I think it's a very nice title. You had some other questions as well?
Yeah, I have one more question. The second Yeah, what I have not. I know a thing or two about Japan. Yeah, I like Japan. Japanese culture of that. And mostly I know that Japanese culture, I mean, as you said, is very strict about when it comes to women, taboo about, anything concerning women, about like, yeah, mostly like more like almost like oriented to men. But we see, especially nowadays, with all those big booms from animes or mangas, that there are a lot of female characters which are very strongly based. Now, my question is, are those strong female characters, from your point of view as a Japanese person, are those strong female characters there just because, like, for other people to say, like, okay, the author didn't forget about women? Or is it like a metaphor for, as a Japanese, I still do believe that women have a right and power? If you catch my drift. So are there like are the women there, female characters there just to be there? Or are they used as a metaphor for, hey Japan, it's time to wake up, women also can be strong?
I don't think it's. I don't know. I grew up with Sarah Moon. Do you guys
Yeah.
know Sarah Moon?
Sure.
And she was so strong. I loved her, but she wore like this short skirt, and when she transformed, she got naked. So I don't know, but so I think we did have strong female character from before, but I think definitely we have more. But then I think we do have more eyes on why there are many sexual violence allowed in anime culture, I think, and we start talking about that because in a way we've been normalizing things as by doing that, and I think it's a debate that's talked about a lot, and we need to discuss more what kind of effect we get. But is it art or is it sexism? And we are still like always have that kind of battle in between. But if I were a kid and I grew up with, well, I loved Sarah Moon, but so I wish I could come up with other thing. But do you know Doraemon? Yeah, there is this Doraemon, and there's this girl who appears it, and she is often somehow picked by a male character while she's taking bath. That's sexual violence, but it's always somehow in a scenario, and that's not okay. You know what I mean? So I think we are now more widely discussed about, and surprising thing is I think we have Japan has a huge porn and sex commercial, and yet there is so many rape culture in it as well. So if we don't talk about that, that's not okay. If we don't have the education, what happens is that kids would learn from it, and maybe they think it's the way to treat your partner, and that's wrong. So you have many ways to express in anime or in different films. I believe there is no border for that. But if we do so, we need to start talking about it. So I think we are start doing that. Sorry, I think it was different way to answer it for your question. Is that okay?
So in a nutshell, those like strong female characters are their role, why they were created is more like based on perspective.
Based on sorry, I don't think I could.
Okay, so like those strong female characters are they like their like appearance? Is it like based on not just their appearance but also how they appear? Yeah. That's your point. Yeah.
Yeah.
Some
Thank
other
you.
questions, if anyone else? Yeah.
I have a question which, when I ask it, I don't mean it to, but it's going to sound controversial. But basically, I understand probably not the majority, but there were quite a few people who were of the idea that basically they were saying always believe the victim, which because I for example have a friend who spent his one weekend in jail after someone falsely accused him of doing something, and then he needed to go through the trial. He won it in the end, but it was a drag to go through, and this can be a career-ending scenario for a man as well, and obviously there are going to be people who are spiteful and just crazy sometimes, and they can just make up lies. So I was just thinking, with all these facts, that it's hard to talk about, hard to prove, and this is also something that's making it even harder to go through everything. And so if there is any way to like lead this conversation, not in the way as they say always believe the victim, but if there is any way to like accommodate the fact that there can be also these instances, and because I don't know if you can prove that something like that happened from some DNA tests, or I don't know, or if it's even possible after like a longer time. But it's just, because I just believed, or I felt like when this movement started, a lot of people were like, okay, women are always victims, and we need to lead the conversation in this way. And I'm just asking if people started to like take in account these counterparts as well, or if there is any possible good way to get to the point when also this is not forgotten.
Thank you for your question. I think you're so brave to talk about that in here. Credit. But women is not the only victim, as you know, and I think I'm really happy you're here because I want you to read my book. So it's hard to prove. That's right. My prosecutor said if someone was watching you being raped, okay, but that's never gonna be the case. Come on, So we have to find many ways to talk about it. But in the end of the day, well, in my book, I just had to lay out all the truths I have, and he claims, and I'm asking my readers, so what do you think? And I think, we gotta listen to people, and of course, it's not like believe the victims. Listen to them, and then you can judge based on what you think. But many laws that we have in different countries are not made for that yet to protect these victims, and that's I think the hardest part. And I heard what you said so many times online, so I'm very happy that I see your face and hear it. I'm very excited, so I can talk back to you. But that's why we gotta talk like this and just really ask yourself. So what do you think? And I know that I'm not talking about all the details about my incident, but I think it's not just for sexual violence. Before you judge it, you listen to it and you ask yourself. So I think it shouldn't be. What I really don't feel comfortable is when it comes to this is men and women, or women, claiming it, because in Japan, what has changed after 2017 was that we had a small change of the law, that now the male victim can be a victim. Before, it wasn't like that. So it was really hard for them to step forward. So I think that was a great change. But yet, there are so many things to update. So welcome to the discussion. Thank you. I'm so happy that you start thinking about that and you being here. So welcome and thank you.
If I may add actually to the debate, then of course, believe all women or believe all victims, however we phrase it, it's one extreme, but let's be honest, we have been living in the opposite extreme for so long that it's kind of natural reaction to also now have this time of recalibration of the debate. But you can read the book. You can also read the statistics that state quite frankly what is the percentage of people who are accusing someone of sexual violence falsely, and other really chilling statistics, how many people actually are potrestaní, punished, yes, thank you, for the crimes that they committed. So I think it's really important not to see only the hashtags, but to try to learn and talk about and listen to the discussion as a whole. And I know there are many things to discuss, but maybe this is a good time to stop. One thing that I wanted to add was that for me it was a really nice moment in the book where you talk about how you came across this art project, this photography series of Mary Calvert, I think, that was focused on topic of sexual violence and how it, in a way, energized you and empowered you, and how sharing our stories through art can be so impactful and so powerful. And I think Black Box is continuing with doing that. So also on my behalf and all of this audience, I want to thank you for being with us today, for writing this book. Really recommend getting it. And thank you so much for being here with us today.
Thank you and arigato.
Ďakujeme.